Somebody's betraying me.
You betrayed me.
You betrayed me.
You betrayed us.
No, Diane, because you betrayed me.
We usually think of betrayal as a calculated piece of malice, a moment where I trust you with my back, and you drive a knife right into it. That definition puts all the blame on moral corruption and personal conspiracy. Except that framework completely fails the moment you bring it to lust caution. In Ang Lee's film, we watch one of the most absurd, almost casual betrayals in cinematic history. This was an assassination plot years in the making. Yet, right when the blade is pressed against the target's throat, the assassin personally lets him walk. Is this the triumph of love? Is it cowardice? Or is it pure self-destruction? Today, we're dissecting lust caution to figure out why people actually betray. In any real well-run organization, there's a basic rule. Risk and decision-making power have to match. If a project asks an employee to take on life-ending risk, the system better back them up with real resources, safety nets, and basic respect. But the group in lust caution was broken from day one. It was the textbook definition of an amateur hour. The leaders took on zero operational risk, while the person executing the plan had zero power. All the core cuts were shoved onto the most vulnerable member, while the management used her destruction to buy themselves a moral halo. The story starts with a bunch of patriotic college students playing at Revolution. After a stage play goes viral, their adrenaline spikes, and they decide to turn that theater passion into a real-world assassination, targeting E, a high-ranking official of the emerging puppet regime. Look at this team like a startup. There are 6 people. The main guy is Kwang Yumin. He's the CEO. He built a team, brought in the resources, and came up with the idea to kill the traitor. He and Wang Jiazhi have feelings for each other, but neither ever admits it. His unspoken flirting is basically cheap emotional manipulation. He uses vague, romantic signals and subtle emotional blackmail to milk Wang Jiazhi's absolute loyalty for free. Lai Xiujin plays HR. Any call the team makes goes through her to Wang Jiazhi. She's secretly in love with Kwang Yumin, and that hidden jealousy turns her into a petty HR. As another woman, she should get what Wang Jiazhi needs better than anyone. But instead, she passively pushes Wang Jiazhi straight into the fire, using the cause as an excuse to settle a personal grudge. Huang Lei is the angel investor. The whole operation is funded by his dad's cash, while he does the dirty work of driving Wang Jiazhi around. Ouyang plays Mr. Mai. He's a terrible actor and totally useless. His only strategy is to stay close to CEO Kwang Yumin, using political loyalty to stay relevant. Then there's Liang Rensheng, the ultimate outcast of the group. His only qualification is that he has visited brothels and has sexual experience. Yet, when the assassination hits a critical point and Wang Jiazhi needs to prepare for physical intimacy with Mr. Yi, this completely reckless team makes a disgusting call. They order Liang Rensheng to take Wang Jiazhi's virginity. The lowest performing, most useless member ends up getting the biggest personal win out of this broken system. And Wang Jiazhi plays Mrs. Mai. She is a soul-filled agent in this honey trap, yet she has zero say in anything. Wang Jiazhi's father took her brother to England, leaving her totally stranded. What drew her to this group was a desperate need to belong. For a moment, she was at the center of their world. The guys fought over her smoked cigarettes, and she was the star of the stage. But that feeling of being needed hid how cruel they actually were. Nobody ever respected her mind or her worth. To them, she was just a pretty face. And in this game, A pretty face is just the most convenient, most disposal tool. The plot plays out in two stages, Hong Kong and Shanghai. In Hong Kong, this amateur cell had no real training and no backup. Wang Jiazhi paid an irreversible personal price to set up the trap. But then Yi got promoted and moved to Shanghai, bringing everything to a dead stop. In this phase, she was treated like a pure collateral damage. Nobody cared what she wanted. She was just informed, used, and tossed aside. For the next 3 years, her life was completely frozen in limbo. 3 years later in Shanghai, her old friends finally tracked her down, now backed with a real underground network, and the plot restarted. Yet, Wang Jiazhi's reality didn't get better. She just went from being a disposal tool to a suspicious outsider. When she reconnected with her old friends and asked how they were doing, all she got was a code that's classified. The system happily banked on her innocence, the exact thing that let her get close to Yi, while turning around and labeling that same innocence as a massive security risk. The system consistently docked what it owned her, refusing to ever treat her like a real human being. So when we talk about Wang Jiazhi's eventual betrayal, let's get one thing straight. When someone is never truly taken in by a system, her walking away isn't a betrayal at all. She never even had a standing to betray in the first place. There's a concept in behavioral economics. When people face massive losses, they rarely cut their losses. Instead, they get obsessed with doubling down. When you pay a price you can never get back, your brain has to invent a grand purpose for that sacrifice. Otherwise, your mind refuses to accept it, leaving you trapped in an endless, painful fight with yourself. That's the psychological trap Wang Jiazhi lived in for 3 years. She had zero feelings for Yi at first, but in her head, she charged the trauma of what happened with Liang Runsheng straight to Yi's tap. If something real happened between her and Yi, her sacrifice meant something. If nothing came of it, she was just a complete idiot. In Hong Kong, it was just a game of cat and mouse, shallow flirtation built on fake identities. But when they reconnected in Shanghai 3 years later, something far darker and more intimate took over. During those last 3 years, Wang Jiazhi went from stranded in Hong Kong to scraping her way back to Shanghai, surviving under her aunt's roof as a broke dependent. Her aunt sold the house her father left behind just to cover her remaining tuition. As for her future, nobody knows. In all that cold uncertainties, the only warmth she got came from Yi. In Yi's paranoid world, everyone wanted something solid from him: money, power, information, or his life. But Wang Jiazhi wanted something completely pure: emotion. For a man who trusted no one, that purity was unexpected. It pulled him in, and for once, he felt something real too. That's how their dynamic flipped. A game built on mutual lies somehow turned into the only place they were both real. For Wang Jiazhi, she was experiencing something no one had ever given her: a distinct, raw warmth, a feeling that she actually mattered, that he treated her differently from anyone else. And to her, none of this made any sense. A powerful, dangerous man like Yi was never short of women. Logically, he had zero reason to really care about her. Yet he did, and that kind of preference was almost impossible. So Wang Jiazhi wasn't seduced by a traitor. She was seduced by an impossible stroke of luck, the terrifying high of finally mattering to someone. Standing on the shaky ground and looking back, She saw that the righteous team offered her nothing but cold orders and a rigid mindset where the cause mattered more than human lives. The enemy, on the other hand, offered her real presence. He actually cared, actually wanted her, and laid his desire right out on the table. The people who were supposed to be her friends left her massive emotional void, while the attention and need of her enemy kept filling it. Betrayal is rarely about jumping ship to another side. In the end, every betrayer makes the exact same call. They choose themselves. Almost every extreme system makes the same mistake, treating human willpower like an endless fuel tank, ignoring a basic psychological fact. Willpower is an insanely expensive resource, not a perpetual machine. When a system tries to completely drain a living person, expecting them to play a puppet without a single flaw, it's not building control, it's dancing on a razor's edge. I've never believed Wang Jiazhi planned out her betrayal. She was consistently hesitating, consistently torn. She even asked her team for help, but nobody thought her mental state mattered. Her boss only cared about her use, not her pain. This comes from a deeply rooted mindset. When her handler pushes her to keep going, he brought up his own story, how Yi had killed his wife and kids, yet he could still sit at the same table with Yi and smile. He thought if he could force himself through it, Wang Jiazhi should too. It's a culture obsessed with sheer greed, ignoring fate and placing absolute faith in human willpower. If you fail, it's just because you didn't want it badly enough. That mindset creates tough people, but it also creates huge blind spots and a terrible read on reality. In the real world, human beings aren't programmed machines. We don't act on master plans. We act on pure impulse, on whatever raw emotion hits us in a split second. Right up until that final second, Wang Jiazhi's real state was like Schrodinger's cat. Her lethal duty and her emotional instinct existed at the exact same time. It's only when the moment hits that one reality collapses into place. And that moment, she whispered "run," that was Wang Jiazhi finally speaking as Wang Jiazhi. Mr. Mai was gone. People often figure out who they are by refusing to be who they were forced to be. Wang Jiazhi started out indecisive, letting everyone push her around. But through all that exploitation, her own voice started to form. She wanted to speak for herself. The betrayal in that jewelry shop wasn't a mistake. It was things finally landing where they belonged. It was a terrifyingly correct choice. She broke away from the righteous cause, costing her team and herself their lives. But for the very first time, her fate was in her own hands. That's the ultimate irony. What we call betrayal is often just a moment someone's true self finally shows up.